Hi, I'm Andrea. Thank you so much for joining me for this 30-minute yoga practice. If you don't happen to have a yoga mat, don't worry. Find an area in your house that is carpeted, or maybe you've got a rug, not one that's going to slip out from underneath you, but that can be your yoga mat for today, no problem. I have 2 yoga blocks. If you are without yoga blocks, 2 thick books are a great substitute. And a folded blanket, super easy. Could be the throw blanket from your couch. Maybe you've got a thick bath towel. It's nice to have something to fold up and pad knees or sit up on for some of our seated stretches. We will start standing, actually coming into a child's pose. So from standing is what I meant to say. Make your way down, and there are different ways to construct a child's pose. So I want to take a moment to give you various recipes, and you can decide which one. Maybe it's toes together and knees apart, and for some people, sitting hips onto their heels happens. And if that's the case, great. You can rest your forehead on a block or on the ground, reach your arms in front of you or alongside you. Some of us, nope, not going to happen with our knees, and no worries, no shame in that. Just walk yourself forward. You could use your head on that block. You could use your elbows on the ground. Knee flexion, that's called, can be a lot. That's a very deep bend in your knees. Sometimes curling your toes under is also helpful to find a child's pose. It wants to be a place where we can pause and land, not feel like it's some sort of a punishment. So child's pose, think of it as like a sweet little moment with your inner child, and create something that's soft enough for you to be there for a few moments so that we can stop. Turn inward, find our breath, and by find I mean we've been breathing all this while, but find an awareness around our breath. Truly experience each inhale and each exhale. A few silent moments to land. Maybe the most advanced thing we'll do all practice. Bring yourself onto all fours. This could already be a time when you use your folded blanket underneath your knees. Now let's parallel our feet a little bit. You might be more comfortable with your toes curled under. That's great. Oomph into your mat. This is like we're rehearsing plank positions. We're not collapsed into our shoulders. I want us to keep that feeling of integrity here. And then we will tuck our tailbone and round our spine a little bit like a scared cat. And then generated by our pelvis, our hips, will then get sassy and lift our hips to the sky. But we keep the same integrity in our arms, so we're still not collapsing at all. And back and forth you go. So just experimenting with tucking the tailbone, and then experimenting with lifting our sit bones high. And all the while, just staying with that almost like we're doing a plank arms. So back and forth you go a few times, getting a little movement in our pelvis. Now, I'm going to ask you to lift your sit bones and then come kneeling. And then once you're kneeling, this is a little interesting. We're orchestrating it from our knees. Step your right foot forward. See if you can do that look mono hands. Kind of interesting, right? And then here we are in a low lunge. This might be where you use your folded blanket underneath your left knee. Now, arms out to the side, thumbs to the sky, a V. It's always challenging not to wear our shoulders and our ears. So you might widen your arms and make that a little bit more likely to feel like freedom. You're investigating dropping your hips, but this doesn't become a collapse. 3 moments, just like this. Your 2 books will come in handy, your blocks if you're using them, and we will frame our right leg. Begin to move this into an experimental straight front leg. So we're just getting started. We're easing in like we're easing into a warm bath. straighten that right leg, dig your right heel in, curl your toes back towards you. And a moment ago, we were tucking our tailbone and rounding. That is not what we're doing now. We're hinging at our hip and elongating our spine. So you could imagine some of that, hey, we're rehearsing for a plank position, happening even here in your arms with your hands on your blocks. Once you get feedback that there's some stretch happening in your hamstring, your right hamstring, you have arrived. Let's see if we can be here. You don't have to do a lot. We just want to be. When we slow things down, there's a different kind of knowing that shows up, that bubbles to the surface. We'll carefully bend our right knee and swoop right knee next to left knee. And then since we did it on the first side, come upright. Remember, padding under knees might be really helpful. And we'll just try to step our left foot forward, bloop. And then once we're there, arms out to the side, thumbs to the sky, a V shape, mindful that we're not shrugging our shoulders into our ears, investigating where it might feel sticky, where it might need a little bit of extra love. Perhaps you start to drop your hips a little bit for a stretch, but I didn't mean collapse your hips, so do note that. And then just a few moments here. Your blocks are likely located on either side of your left foot now, or you trot them in, and then we will straighten our left leg, curl those left toes back, and remember that we are not doing that rounding, tucking our tailbone thing. We are hinging at that left hip, and there's a sweet spot that you will find, or will find you, in your hamstring stretch here. And then notice what you notice. It's important to go not beyond your edge, but right up to it. And then honor it. And breathe into it. A few more moments here. Bend your left knee and swoop that left knee next to your right knee. Take the two blocks that you have off to the side so that they aren't under your hands, aren't under your feet. Now we'll think as we press into our hands that we're rehearsing once again for that plank position. And now bring one forearm and then the other, and slither onto your belly and into a Sphinx pose. I'd like us to press into the tops of our feet and lift our kneecaps so we've got some energy in our legs. And traction our heart through the gateway of our arms. We're still not wearing our shoulders into our ears. Chin parallel to the ground instead of overcompensating in our neck. And then imagine that there's a loving hand in between your shoulder blades, and this traction of your elbows towards you is that loving hand pressing those shoulder blades gently towards each other and as if they could move to the front of your body. Now we'll lower down enough that we can curl our toes under, and now push into your forearms like we were rehearsing for a plank, because we're actually rehearsing for a forearm plank here. Now as you push and you fill out that in between your shoulder blades, completely different than when the loving hand was drawing them towards each other. Begin to lift your belly off your mat. Keep your knees on the ground for now, and maybe keep your knees on the ground for this whole time. If you can keep the integrity in your upper body and for a moment lift your knees off your mat without it being too much, you'll do that, and then bring your knees back down. Lower your thighs and hips, and then uncurl your toes and slide your hands back to your floating ribs. A low cobra is exactly that. We're not trying to go really high here. Press into the tops of your feet, let your kneecaps lift again. Traction your hands, feel your collarbones smile, and then again, I caution you, not chin forward, but chest forward, which probably doesn't look like as much movement, but feels really delicious, and it's where we want to put this. Lower down and bring your forearms onto your mat. push into that karate chop feel of your forearms so you fill out in between your shoulder blades. Curl your toes under and then just lift your hips and your thighs and maybe possibly your knees off your mat for this plank on our forearm moment. And then we will lower our knees, our thighs, our hips, unravel, bring it back into that gentle, low cobra. This time lower down and keep your hands next to your ribs. Curl your toes under. We need some core strength to come to all fours from here. And from all fours here, walk your hands just a couple of inches forward and make this our first down dog. Find a hook in your tailbone, push a lot into your arms, lift your hips up and back. Step your feet as wide as your mat, bend your knees, and get a little sassy lifting your sit bones. Remember we did that in our cat-cow on our hands and knees. We'll walk forward, feet come to our hands at the front edge of our mat, hip distance and parallel. Slide your hands to your ankles, your shins, or even up to your thighs as you inhale. And then hinge at your hips as we exhale and try to keep some length in your spine as you do. Then inhale, rise, reach, arms to the sky, thumbs to the sky, a V. We stand in our mountain with our palms facing out and uplift to our heart, almost as if doing Sphinx pose while standing. Inhale, arms out and up, thumbs to the sky, a V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips and take your hands to your thighs or your shins or your ankles. Inhale, slide your hands up and uplift your heart. Then bend your knees deeply enough that your palms get flat on the ground so that we can step back to down dog, pushing the ground away, lifting our hips up and back. You can have a pretty wide stance, a bend to your knees. You can come onto your tiptoes. Maybe eventually you start to think about your heels sinking a little heavier to the ground, and maybe hip distance is your stance. Now let's go slow and shift our shoulders over our wrists. This is the plank that we talked about preparing for. Bring your knees to your mat and keep pushing the ground away so that we keep that filled out feeling in between our shoulder blades. With our core nice and toned, start a slow descent onto your belly, elbows brush against your ribs as you go. Then uncurl your toes and press the tops of your feet down so we get a little of that lift of our kneecaps. Traction, your heart through the gateway of your arms. Be careful not to throw your chin. And then lower down, curl your toes under. Find our core strength that takes us to all fours. And then the hook in our tailbone takes us into down dog, lifting our hips up and back. From our down dog, we'll walk forward. Feet come all the way up to our hands and hip distance. Inhale, lift your heart, slide your hands up. Exhale, hinge at your hips, slide your hands down. Inhale, rise, reach thumbs to the sky, a V shape, and then we pause with our palms facing out. We'll do that again, slowly. Inhale, arms out and up, thumbs to the sky, a V, and then we exhale, hinge at our hips and hands, come to thighs or shins or ankles. Inhale, slide your hands up, lift your heart, bend your knees deeply, palms go flat, step to down dog and push the ground away as you do. Come forward, shoulders over wrists, keep pushing the ground away and lower your knees. With a nice strong trunk stability, we lower all the way to our belly and uncurl our toes. Press into the tops of your feet, draw your heart through the gateway of your arms, and then lower down. Curl your toes under and bring yourself to hands and knees. From hands and knees, the hook in our tailbone takes us up and back into down dog. We're pushing the ground away really strong. And we walk our feet forward to our hands. Hip distance in parallel, we take our hands up, slide them up, lift our heart, inhale, and then hinge and fold as we exhale. Inhale, rise, reach, arms to the sky, and then stand in your mountain with your palms facing out. Time to rearrange our props. Take your 2 tall blocks or books, and place them off the long edge of your mat. So we always want to place our props not underfoot, but within reach. They are there to help us, not hinder. Take a wide stance. Arms out to the side, thumbs to the sky. Let's start by finding ankles underneath wrists, and we will refine it from there. Turn your right leg out so that your right foot is facing that short edge of your mat, and then sneak your left heel at a 45-degree angle. With our arms wide out to the side and our thumbs to the sky, we'll bend our front knee. And we want to have a parallel line, a vertical line from our knee to our ankle. So I need to scoot my right foot forward a little bit, and you might find it helpful to do the same. So you don't have your knee jutted out in front of your right ankle. We pause a moment. We make sure that our right knee is not collapsed inward, but instead right thigh bone moves towards the right. Right hip bone is hooking underneath us. Left thigh bone is pressing into the hamstring. 3 moments here. If it's too much, you can always straighten and rebend that front knee, that right knee. We'll take a karate chop of our right forearm across our right thigh and left arm up to the sky, thumb to the sky. It is not a collapse into our right shoulder, although that can feel tempting, nor is it us swinging our hips out to the right. So hug that right hip underneath you. I think most, if not many if not most of us will find this form across the thigh to be perfect. It could be that you take your block on the outside of your right foot, and some of us will prefer our left arm behind our back of our hand to the small of our back. All of us are thinking Sphinx pose as we rotate our right ribs, our bottom ribs towards the sky. 3 moments together here. In slow motion, we straighten our right leg. My hand is on my block. If you've got form across your thigh, you might use your block. Or you can use your thigh, but I want you to be careful not to throw too much weight into it. You can use your shin or your ankle, but let's try to think a hinge at our hips, an elongation of our spine. Maybe left arm to the sky, maybe left arm behind your back. 3 moments together here. You have the option to stay just like this. You might take your left hand on your hip and float this triangle for a moment on only your right leg in a pose called half moon. So look down, and if you are interested in that, move your block about a foot out in front of your left pinky toe, hug that right hip underneath you, and you might even float your left arm up to the sky. We're headed back to meet our friends in triangle. So left hand on your hip, step your left foot 4 feet back. Situate that block once again on the outside of your right foot. And we come out the same way that we came in a way. So take a look down and bend your right knee. Move your block off the side of your mat, warrior 2 for a brief moment. Straighten your front leg, turn all toes to face the long edge of your mat, and pause. That was a lot. Pause a second. We'll take that on our second side. Give yourself any breaks that you might need. Turn your left leg out so your left foot is facing the short edge of your mat. Cheat that right heel back at a 45-degree angle. Arms wide, thumbs to the sky. Bend your left knee. You may need to once again adjust left foot forward so the vertical line of left knee and left ankle takes place. Remember, we're trying not to scoot our left hip out to the side. Let that hug underneath you, and your left thigh bone is moving towards the left as your right thigh connects to your right hamstring. We will then take our left forearm like a karate chop onto our left thigh. It can encourage, not force, but encourage that left thigh bone to the left as opposed to caving in. Maybe right hand behind your back. Some of you will take your block and place that block on the outside of your left foot and use that for what's called side angle pose. We have a little hit of a memory of Sphinx pose that helps us to elongate our spine and rotate now our left ribs towards the sky. 3 moments here. And then we slowly begin to straighten that left leg by pressing our left big toe mound. Remember, I think it's pretty great to have a prop so that we're not rounded and crumbled. We have a hip hinge, so that right hip actually lifts a little bit. And you can use your ankle, but I want you to be very careful not to force your left leg into hyperextension, like overly straighten it. You can have your right arm up to the sky, or you can weave it behind your back, and we spend a couple of moments in triangle here. Stay here if you'd like, or put your right hand on your hip and float this onto only your left leg. You'll hop your right foot back, move your block about a foot in front of that left pinky toe, and then just give it a shot. See if you can float it, maybe even float your right arm up. No pressure to do this part. Right hand on your hip, and we step it back into triangle where some of our friends await. And then on our way out from triangle, we visit our friend warrior two. So bend your left knee, move your block, your prop out of your way, come all the way upright, then straighten that front leg, turn all toes to face the long edge of your mat, and heel toe, until you're hip distance, and can pause and let all of that digest for just a moment. We will rearrange the blocks, books that you've got, place them on either side of your mat, facing the short edge of your mat. Situate yourself as if we were going to do a sun salutation, because guess what? We're going to do a sun salutation. But this time our sun salutation will involve a chair pose, V shape. Exhale, hinge at your hips, slide your hands down your shins, your ankles, wherever they like to go. Glide your hands up as you inhale. Bend your knees, palms flat. Step yourself into downward facing dog. Lift your right leg back behind you. Step that right foot forward. You may need to help it along. There is zero shame in that. And then once you're here in your lunge, let your left hand stay on your block and float your right arm up to the sky. So we've got a little bit of a twist. We're not here long. We're kind of chugging through this a little bit of movement. Move your blocks off to the side, palms flat, head to down dog. Option to stay here or to come to plank, shoulders over wrists, bring your knees to your mat. Slowly lower all the way onto your belly and uncurl your toes into your cobra. Lower down and curl your toes back under. Go through all fours. We meet our friends who are in the downward facing dog. Left leg will lift. And then we step that forward and help it along if it's useful. Situate your blocks on either side of that left foot. And we twist. Our right hand stays on our block and our left arm opens up towards the side. So it's still slow motion. Slow as we go, but a little bit less slow than some things we've been up to. Move your blocks off the sides of your mat and make your way into downward facing dog. From down dog, lift your right leg behind you, step it forward, help it along. Lower your back knee. You might want the padding from earlier. And then arms out to the side, thumbs to the sky. Bring a prayer in front of your heart. Hinge at your hip. Take your left elbow outside your right thigh for a little twist here. Unwind. Take your two blocks and stack them on top of one another. Come onto your forearms. You can scoot that right foot forward a little bit. Maybe you stay on your hands instead of your forearms. Some of you will bring your forearms onto the ground and not really need blocks. We're all a little bit different that way. Humble warrior. Remember our Sphinx pose we did earlier? Especially my friends who happen to have forearms, but even if you're on your hands, let's think chest, heart through the gateway of our arms, not chin, remember, but chest, as we humbly bow here. Just a few more moments. recall we did this at the beginning, we'll come up, transfer our blocks to either side of the right foot, straighten that right leg, and it can be exactly like we did at the very beginning. Or you can scoot your right heel forward and scoot your left knee back so it starts to look a little bit more like you're about to do the splits. Maybe some of you do the splits. That's not the goal. The prize is in the reach. Find that sweet spot that we talked about at the very beginning. Go slow so that you know. A few moments here. We bend that right knee, move our blocks off to the side so we can make our way to down dog. And then it's a simple lift of our left leg. We step it through. We'll lower our back knee, come up, arms out to the side, thumbs to the sky, hands in a prayer, and now right elbow hooks outside our left thigh for just a brief moment here in our twist. Unravel, stack your two blocks or stay on your hands, and we come into our humble warrior, our humble posture that reminds us a little bit of the Sphinx, drawing the chest, our heart through the gateway of our arms. And lastly, we'll come up, situate our blocks on either side of our left leg, and then straighten that left leg and decide if we want to scoot the left heel forward, the right knee back to any degree. And a few moments here in something that may look a little bit like a split. Slow as you go, bend that left knee. We come first onto our hands and knees, but ultimately into our final Shavasana meditation. Now, if you would rather sit and meditate cross-legged, great. If you're interested in the Shavasana final meditation, let's take a moment to set it up. Lying down, snuggle your shoulder blades underneath you and step your feet as wide as your mat, letting your knees fall in on each other as if you were knock-kneed. Lift your hips up just an inch, create a bit of space there, and you could do your Shavasana just like this. If it feels good, extend one leg and then the other leg straight. Close your eyes if that's comfortable to you. Rest and digest. And you are welcome to stay here in your final Shavasana meditation for as long as you'd like. If you're ready to start to slowly make your way back, wiggle fingers and toes, bend your knees and place your feet on your mat. Roll carefully to either side and let your head be the last thing to come up to any sort of a comfortable seat. You could even sit on a block or two. Palms up or down, and then we'll take our hands onto our heart and maybe have a little splash of gratitude here. I'm Andrea. Thank you so much for practicing with me. I look forward to us doing this again together soon.